Hey, welcome back. Thank you so much for joining me today. I have $70 for the week and I want to make several breakfast, lunch, and dinner ideas. So let's head to the store and pick up some groceries. Here is my list today. Let's try to keep it under $75. First thing I'm going to get is 2 dozen eggs. They're $1.59 a dozen, so let's get 2. Next I'll get one 32-ounce container of Greek yogurt for $3.49. I will be using a little bit of butter for these recipes, but not enough to buy an entire container. So if you have any kind of butter or some sort of fat at home, you probably won't need to buy it. But if you want to, you can. It's $3.29 a pound here, so it won't add a ton to the budget today. But I won't be picking up an entire pound. I just need a tiny, tiny bit for my recipes. Next, we're gonna be picking up some chicken. So I'll be looking at a whole chicken for $1.29 a pound. And then I'll be picking up some chicken leg quarters. These are $1.19 a pound, but they do have some good deals on drumsticks right now, 99 cents a pound for that. So definitely just see what chicken is cheapest and go with that. I do like the leg quarters because you get a good amount of meat, and then I also save the bones and skin to make broth or stock later. So that's what I'm gonna be doing this week. So just about 5 pounds of the chicken leg quarters, that's gonna be $5.83. And then my whole chicken is gonna be $6.98, and it's a little over 5 pounds, almost 5.5 pounds for this one. Next, I'll get 1 container of the crumbled feta for $1.65. Normally I get a full pound of cheese. It's $3.79, that's 23.7 cents per ounce. But since I don't need as much cheese this week, I think I'll be going with a 12-ounce bag of the Mexican shredded cheese, or maybe the cheddar, and it's 24.1 cents per ounce. So not a whole lot more expensive. It doesn't melt as well because it does have like anti-caking agents in it. But this is what I'm gonna be using this week because it's a little less expensive. And it looks like the Colby Jack shredded cheese is $2.49, so that's on sale. So that is what I'm gonna be getting today. And that's one way that I save money, is sometimes I'll look for the cheapest option. I just needed some sort of cheese like this. So this is gonna be saving me about 50 cents today. Then we'll get 1 block of cream cheese for $1.45. Then I'll get 1 5-pound bag of flour for $2.35. I'm gonna get 2 of these 3 packs of instant yeast. They're 79 cents each. Then 1 box of rotini for 98 cents and 1 box of penne for 98 cents. And I want to mention that they do have these spices here. They're 89 cents each, and they have all kinds of different ones that you'd normally buy in smaller containers for more money. So if you needed like chili powder, paprika, cumin, even garlic powder, sesame seeds, curry, they have these options, cayenne, all kinds of stuff, and it's only 89 cents. So this is a great deal if you're looking to stock your spice drawer. I would definitely come to this aisle. Next, I'll get a bag of quinoa for $3.49. If you don't like quinoa, you can also do brown rice or white rice, any kind of rice or grain that you like. Then I'll get 1 can of corn for 64 cents. The reason why I'm doing canned corn today is because I'm looking for the sweetness and the extra sodium and everything that's in the can. Now, if you're trying to avoid the sodium, you can do frozen corn, so that's an option. Just depends on what you like to eat and everything. This one has 13% of the daily value of sodium in just half a cup, and there's 3.5 of those servings. So just keep that in mind when you're making the dish, that you may not have to add as much salt if you're using canned goods. Then I'll get 1 can of black beans for 85 cents. Although the dried black beans, I believe they're $2.99 or something like that. So you can get a whole lot more black beans for just a little bit more, in the 1 week. But again, this is gonna be having a little bit more salt in it too, versus if you made it yourself. So just keep that in mind. But I'm just doing it this week because I only need it for 1 dish, and I wanna show you kind of a budget-friendly way of doing this week. Next, I'll be getting a jar here of Kalamata olives for $2.19. I'm looking for a ton of flavor in some of my salads and dishes, so that's why I'm going to be getting a jar of this, but you could definitely skip it if you don't like olives. Next, I'll be getting red onions. I've budgeted around $2, so I'm going to try to get around $2 worth of red onions today. And this is going to be a little bit less than 2 pounds, so it should be right around $2 for these 2 red onions. I've budgeted around $2 for my yellow onions this week. I see that sweet onions here are $2.15, and those are basically the same to me. So they have yellow onions here for $2.56. I'm just gonna see which ones are better quality and then just grab a bag. These are 2-pound bags. Actually, I'm seeing this one is a 3-pound bags. This is 85 cents a pound, and this one's $1.08 a pound. So it definitely would be worth it and get more onions if I'm just going to do about 40 cents more here for the 3-pound bag. So unfortunately, I don't see a lot of quality here in these ones. These ones look older. I see a little bit more mold, which you can cut off if you're not allergic. Just be careful doing that. Make sure you wash it. But these may sprout this week, and so I don't really want to do that. So I think I'm just going to go ahead and go with these. They look a lot fresher, and these are $2.15 for the 2-pound bag, and that way I'll be able to use more of the onion when I get these instead of throwing out some of that. Next, I just need to get a couple containers of grape tomatoes. I'm either going to do cherub or these ones here. These are organic for $2.79, and they're both 10 ounces. So whichever ones are fresher, that's what I'm going to get today. Next, I'll be getting some garlic for $1.77. Next, I'll be getting avocados for 67 cents each. I'll be getting about $3 worth. And I'm lucky because the Roma tomatoes are 49 cents a pound right now, so we'll be getting about 5 pounds or so. Here we go. Next, I'll be getting a few limes for 19 cents each. Let's get one more for good measure. Today, I'll also be getting 2 pounds of carrots for $1.49. If I didn't have as much in the budget, if I just couldn't do the extra 50 cents, I could just get these for 97 cents, but these are only a pound. So I'll be getting a whole lot more carrots for just a little bit more money here for $1.49. Iceberg lettuce is on sale this week for 65 cents, so I'll get 1 head of lettuce. Let's get 2 today. Next, I'll get some zucchini, $1.29 a pound. This package is $1.88. Next, I need 6 bell peppers, so I'll be getting 2 of these packs for $1.59 each. Next, I'll get 1 bag of spinach for $1.39. Then I'll get 4 cucumbers for 59 cents each. Next, I'll get 2 bags of frozen veggie mix for 99 cents each. But I do want to mention they also have organic options in the frozen veggies, so you can get them for $1.69 each if you'd prefer to do organic. They also have organic spinach and broccoli up here for $1.95, and even some butternut squash and sweet potatoes for $1.75. All right, let's go to the checkout and see how much we're paying for everything today. We got a lot of groceries today, and we spent $69.67. First, I'm going to work on a couple of the prep recipes. These are items that are going to be sides with a couple of the dishes. So first, I'm going to start by making a 2-hour no-knead bread. This bread is so easy, and it comes together in less than 2 hours. So first, I like to weigh out my flour to 425 grams, but if you don't have a way to weigh it, you can just measure out 3 1/4 cup, add a little bit of salt, some honey, and 1 packet of instant fast-acting yeast, and mix that together. Then I'll mix in 1 1/2 cups of warm water. I just want to make sure that this water is between 105 and 110 degrees Fahrenheit to make sure that the yeast is activated properly. Then I'll just cover this with some beeswax wraps, or you can use plastic wrap if that's what you have, and I'll set it aside for about an hour or until it doubles in size or so. It's going to look something like this with some bubbles on top, and the dough is going to be a little bit sticky. Then I'm going to put a bunch of flour down on a surface, just my countertop because it's nice and smooth, and I'll dump that dough right into the flour and fold over the edges just so it resembles sort of a dough shape. And then I'll pick it up carefully and put it on some parchment and make sure that there's flour on top, because when I cover it, I don't want it to stick to the plastic wrap or beeswax wrap. Now I'm just going to be placing my Dutch oven into a cold oven with the lid on, and then I'll close that up and start preheating it to 425 degrees. Once that's come to temperature, I'll take it out and just open the lid and carefully place my dough in with the parchment paper, being really, really careful because it's very, very hot. And then I'll put the lid back on and put this back in the oven for 30 minutes. After 30 minutes, I'm going to take this out of the oven again, take off the lid, and then put it back in for another 10 to 15 minutes until it's nice and brown and crispy on top. So you really can judge how crispy you'd like your bread. I find that 10 minutes is just perfect for me and my oven and my Dutch oven, and it comes out perfectly every time now. Once the dough is done, take it out of the oven and then carefully remove it from the Dutch oven and let it cool on a cooling rack so that way it fully cooks through. This is going to take about 30 minutes of resting, so don't cut it too quickly. Make sure that it has 20 to 30 minutes at least of time to rest and fully cook through. This next recipe is a garlic butter naan, but the garlic and butter is optional, but the naan is definitely a must for sides with a few of the dishes I'm going to be serving. So first, I'm going to put some sugar, water, and yeast in a bowl and set that aside so the yeast can get activated. And in the meantime, in a medium bowl, I'm going to stir together the flour, baking powder, and salt. And again, if you have a way to measure it, definitely do that. This is 500 grams of flour. It does make a difference in how it turns out, but if not, you can just measure the 4 cups of flour. Just be careful careful not to add too much flour. If it's not sticky enough, then you can always add a little bit more liquid though. So that's definitely an adjustment you can make later if you need to. Once the yeast mixture is ready after about 10 to 15 minutes, I'm going to add it to the flour mixture with a little bit of oil and stir that until it just comes together. Then I'm going to pour the dough onto a surface that is not floured and oil my hands very generously. I'm going to continue to oil my hands throughout this process just to make sure that I have enough oil in my hands to actually knead the dough, because it is going to be pretty sticky. But after about 5 minutes or so of kneading, it'll be nice and soft and pillowy, and it won't stick as much to the surface or my hands, and that's exactly what we want with this dough. Once the dough is nice and soft, I'll shape it into a ball and place it into an oiled bowl and turn it a few times to make sure that the oil is coating the dough completely. Then I'm going to cover it and set it aside for about 90 minutes or until it at least doubles in size. This step could take up to 4 hours depending on how cool your kitchen is. The warmer your kitchen, the faster this is going to happen for you. After the dough has doubled in size, I'll uncover it and gently punch the dough to deflate it. Now I'm just going to separate the dough into about 12 to 16 equal pieces and roll each one into a ball. Now, depending on how large you want your naan, that's going to dictate how many pieces you get. So the smaller the pieces, the more naan you're going to get. But again, they're going to be smaller pieces of naan. Then we're just going to place that on a parchment-lined baking sheet and start getting our cast iron skillet all warmed up. If you don't have a cast iron skillet, you can just use any kind of heavy bottom skillet that's large enough to accommodate these pieces of naan that you're making. So just make sure it's heated on medium-high heat because we want it to be relatively hot. And then in a small bowl, we're also going to stir together the melted butter and the minced garlic so everything is all set up for when we need to actually cook these dough balls into the naan. Now, before you start rolling out your naan, make sure you have a small bowl with water readily available because you're going to need that in just a minute. Now, we're going to use a rolling pin and just carefully back and forth roll out the dough to about 1/4 inch thickness. Now we're going to make sure we don't do this too thin because we want to make sure it gets nice and bubbly and fluffy. So 1/4 inch is usually perfect. Then we're going to dip our fingers in the water and put a little bit of water on one side of the dough and then put the water side down into our heated skillet. Now we're going to just let this cook undisturbed for a few minutes, about 2 to 3 minutes until it's nicely browned and a little bit bubbly. Then we can flip it over, and once we flip it over, we want to cover it with a lid to make sure it gets fluffy. If you don't have a lid of the right size, you don't need to use a lid, but it won't be a fluffy naan, so that will be the difference there, but you can do that. Once it's all browned on the other side, you can just take that out and then quickly put that butter garlic on top by just brushing it on lightly, and then just continue to do this process until all of the dough is cooked and you have all of this yummy naan. Now, I will just keep this in the refrigerator for about 5 days, but it's not going to last that long. It's going to get eaten up fast. Next, I'm going to start cooking up my tortillas. I've made this recipe several times. It's very fast and very easy and uses very few ingredients. First, I start by mixing together 2 cups of flour and 1/2 teaspoon of salt in a large bowl. I don't weigh out the flour in this case. I just scoop it out using dry measuring cups, and so you could do that as well. Once that's mixed together, I add 3/4 cup of water and 3 tablespoons of olive oil. We're not using any yeast or anything like that in this recipe. These are all the ingredients for tortillas. It's very easy. We're just going to mix it all together until it's mostly combined. Then I'll turn the dough out onto a well-floured surface and knead the dough about 10 times. It doesn't have to be a specific amount of time, just about 10 times or so, and then we'll let the dough rest for 10 minutes. After it's rested, we'll cut the dough into 8 equal pieces. You can definitely do more pieces if you'd like smaller tortillas, or less pieces if you'd like large tortillas, but I'd recommend making them about 8 to 10 inch circles overall. So 8 pieces usually works well for this recipe. So once they're all cut, then we can roll them into a ball and very gently roll them out. And we're going to try to make these as thin as possible, mostly just because I want them to be large enough to roll eggs inside later for a breakfast idea. So that's up to you how large you'd like them, and that really just depends on your preference. Then we'll put this on a warmed skillet and let that bubble up and cook, and once it's brown on one side, we'll flip it over and let it brown the rest of the way on the other side. Then we'll just continue to do this for the rest of the dough, and that's it for tortillas. I'm going to keep these in the refrigerator in an airtight container for up to 5 days. And the first thing I want to make with these is chips, and to make those, I just cut each tortilla into 8 chip-sized pieces and fry them in oil on one side until browned, flip it until it's browned again, and then I remove these to a plate that is lined with a paper towel and put a little bit of salt on top. And you can either make these in advance and they'll last about 2 to 3 days, or you can make them right before you need them. This first recipe is a very easy avocado toast with sliced tomatoes on top. I'm just going to toast one of the pieces of the bread that we made, then slice open an avocado and use half of the avocado on one slice of toast. I like to use this little tool to avoid having any injuries in the kitchen. It's my favorite. Then after that, I'll mash this avocado down just a little bit on the toast so it sticks a little bit better and doesn't fall off when I try to eat it. Then I'll put the sliced tomatoes on top and a little bit of salt and pepper. You could add oil and some balsamic on top, and that would be amazing, or some bacon if you have it, but it's just amazing just like this. And you can really add any kind of seasonings that you like to make it your own. This next recipe is a really fun and easy non-breakfast pizza. First, I'll beat the eggs in a separate bowl. I'm using just 2 eggs for one pizza, but you could use up to 6 eggs here and make about 4 pizzas with 4 pieces of naan. Then I'll melt some butter in a medium skillet. Once it's melted, I'll add those beaten eggs to it and then just push that around until it's nicely cooked through and just continue turning. And now you don't need to use butter. You can use any fat that you have on hand, some oil, or just some water to help the eggs cook, and that will work just fine. Then season with salt and pepper and add onto your warmed naan. You can just warm it in the microwave if you like, and then add a little bit of shredded cheese on top, maybe some diced tomatoes, any other seasoning you like. And I did have some green onions from the garden, so I added that as well, and some garlic powder would be excellent in these eggs too for some added flavor. You can really add anything that you like to this to really make this breakfast delicious. This next breakfast idea is one of my favorites. It's fried eggs on toast. So I'm just going to toast the bread in the toaster and then put it on a plate and add a little bit of fresh spinach. I'm taking off some of the stems just because they're a little difficult to eat sometimes. And in the meantime, I'll be cooking my fried eggs in a medium skillet by just cracking them into the skillet with some butter and then turning them until they're nicely cooked through and adding a little bit of salt and pepper. Then I'll just place that on top of the spinach, add some hot sauce, and there you go. Super easy breakfast and really filling and delicious. Next, we'll be using a few of our tortillas to make some egg and cheese burritos. This is very basic, but you can zhuzh it up any way that you like. For this recipe, I'm using 6 eggs in a bowl. Now you can add your salt, pepper, garlic powder, or any seasonings that you like to the eggs directly here or season them after. It's up to you. Then in a large skillet, I'll melt a little bit of butter or any fat, oil, or just a little bit of water, and then add my egg mixture. I'm just going to push that around again. We're just scrambling the eggs and making sure they get nice and cooked through, but not overcooked. Now again, you can add your seasoning afterwards if you like, or you could have added it before, and that's up to you as well. Now I'll just break it up and add a little bit of cheese on top and just let this get melty for a minute and turn off the heat, and then add that to my warm tortillas. And you can add some salsa, hot sauce, any kind of veggies you like. Roll this up. It's also freezer friendly. You can freeze these and then just heat them up when you're ready to eat them in the morning. This first lunch or dinner idea is a very easy egg fried quinoa, similar to an egg fried rice. So first I'm going to start by heating a large skillet and adding a little bit of oil and a little bit of butter, about a tablespoon of each, letting that butter melt. Then I'm going to add some onions and saute those until they're nice and soft and translucent, about 3 to 4 minutes. After those are nice and soft, I'll add my zucchini that I've chopped and the bag of frozen veggies and saute that until they're nice and cooked through. I'm also going to season all these veggies with some salt, pepper, and garlic powder. If I was using some minced garlic in this recipe, I might skip the garlic powder, but it really adds a lot of flavor to this dish. You can add a lot of different seasonings here as well, depending on what you prefer. You could add some ginger or any kind of seasonings that you like in an egg fried rice. It really is up to you. I'm going to add a little bit more salt and pepper to taste, and once these are nice and cooked through and heated, then I'll set them aside in a separate bowl while I continue to cook the rest of the ingredients separately. That does make a difference too. We don't want to overcrowd the pan here. So I'll add a little bit more oil and a little more butter, about a tablespoon, to the pan. Make sure it's nice and hot, and then I'll add my chilled quinoa. The quinoa does have to be chilled for it to be the right texture for frying, but if you're short on time, you could just pop it in the freezer for a few minutes before you get started on cooking. All I did was make this in the morning, put it in the refrigerator for at least 2 hours before I started cooking it, but you could definitely do this overnight. Just depends on how much time you have. While I'm cooking, I'm going to season this with salt and pepper and add just a tiny bit of soy sauce for color, and then I'll continue stirring until it's nice and golden brown. And I'm going to set that aside as well, because now we're going to scramble some eggs. I'm just going to add a little bit of oil to the same pan, crack the eggs, and then just stir them around. It's not going to look super pretty because it's in the same pan as all of the other things. That's totally fine because we're going to mix this all together. I'm just going to cook the eggs through, and then I'm going to add the rest of the ingredients back and give this a good stir. To really get that restaurant quality flavor for this dish, we're going to add a tiny bit more butter at the end to really get that buttery, delicious flavor that you get when you order something like this from a restaurant. Now, don't forget to taste it and then serve it on up with a little bit more soy sauce on the side and enjoy. This next recipe is a slow cooker chicken and veggies with Mediterranean salad. It just requires a little bit of prep and not a lot of hands-on cooking. First, we're going to start by putting the onions and carrots that are chopped into large chunks in the bottom of our slow cooker. You can always add more veggies in the future if you make this another time. You can use potatoes as well, but I recommend doing gold potatoes or whole red potatoes for the bottom of that, just to make sure they don't get mushy. Now, I'll add my chicken on top of all the veggies and then pour the melted butter all over the skin, covering as much as the chicken as possible. Then we'll squeeze that lime juice on top, again trying to coat as much of the chicken with the lime juice. If you have lemon, you could do that instead. Either works perfectly fine. And then you can put that lime or lemon directly in the cavity for aromatics. Then I'll season the chicken all over with salt, pepper, thyme, paprika, and garlic powder. The seasoning is extremely important with this one. It's going to be adding all of the flavor to this dish, and we're going to be shredding this chicken and saving it for all of the dishes. We want to make sure this chicken turns out really nice and flavorful because it really will make the difference for the rest of the meals for the entire week. So really experiment and use any seasonings that you like or the flavors that you're going for the entire week of all the dishes. I feel like these seasonings do really well with most dishes that I'm making this week, so that's why I chose these ones, but it's totally up to you. Then we'll cover that and put it on low for about 3.5 to 4 hours or until the temperature is 165 degrees Fahrenheit internally on that chicken. Next, I'm going to prep my dressing in advance. So in a jar, I'm adding 1/2 cup of olive oil, a teaspoon of Dijon mustard, some lime juice, salt and pepper, and minced garlic. I did also add a little bit of Italian seasoning, but that's not required. You can add a little bit of thyme instead, or just leave out the extra seasoning. It'll be delicious without it or with it. It just depends on what kind of flavor you're going for the dressing for the salad. Now I'm just going to cover that up with the lid tightly and give it a good shake, and I'm going to store this in the refrigerator until I'm ready to use it later on with dinner. I'm also going to prep the salad in advance. I'm just going to leave the cheese off until I actually serve it with dinner, just to make sure things don't get mushy. So I'm adding all of this lettuce that I chopped and washed, of course, very thoroughly. Then I'm adding those Kalamata olives, some halved grape tomatoes, cucumbers, and red onions. And if you have a bell pepper left over, you can also add that to this salad. It'll add a ton of flavor, and you can make this salad multiple times in the week, and you may have some leftovers. So just keep that in mind. You'll have lots of veggies, so you can make a ton of salads. You can do spinach instead of lettuce if that's what you prefer as well. And now that the chicken is all done cooking and it's 165 degrees internally, I'm going to set that aside, cover the veggies so they stay nice and warm, and I'll shred that chicken, setting aside a little over a cup for this dinner this evening. I'm going to be serving it with the veggies, the salad, some of that toasted bread with butter on top, so there'll be plenty of food for tonight. And then I'll keep the bones and the skin for broth later and separate the chicken in about 4 additional portions, about a cup each of shredded chicken to save for the rest of the recipes for the week. And if you're weighing things, the chicken will actually weigh out to be about 5 ounces per portion, but it is 1 cup of dry measured chicken, so it just depends on how you measure it. Now when I'm ready to make the salad, I'll add the dressing and feta, give it a good toss, and serve it with the toast, the chicken, and those veggies. Now don't forget to save the broth on the bottom. We're going to use that later, so just keep that in the fridge for up to 3 days. Next, we're making a sheet pan chicken and veggies with naan. This is a very easy recipe and comes together really quickly, so it's perfect for a busy night. I'm just going to pat dry those 5 pounds of chicken leg quarters and then put those on a parchment-lined sheet tray and preheat my oven to 425 degrees while I'm doing all of this. Then I'm going to drizzle some olive oil on top of all of the chicken and season with salt, pepper, garlic powder, Italian seasoning, and some lime juice, and give that a good toss. I'm using Italian seasoning in a lot of these recipes just in case you don't have a ton of seasonings on hand. You really can use whatever you have, and this will be delicious. You can do paprika or any kind of thyme, oregano, some dried basil, any kind of seasoning that you have on hand to season the chicken will work perfectly fine. It's all going to be delicious. Just make sure that you season relatively generously, and you're going to find that it's going to be amazing either way. flip that chicken and make sure you season the other side. It's going to make a huge difference. We're going to pop that in the oven and then put all of our veggies on a separate sheet tray. And again, we're seasoning this with oil, some salt, pepper, garlic powder, Italian seasoning, or any seasonings that you love. Give that a good toss and just make sure it's really generously seasoned on both sides. In this case, I'm using some red bell peppers, onions, and tomatoes that I've chopped in large pieces, but you can use any veggies that you like to serve on the side with chicken. These ones work really, really well with the naan, and I love roasted red peppers, but it's definitely personal preference, so you can use any color bell pepper that you like or any veggies that you like. Now we'll put that in the oven with the chicken and cook that for about 25 to 30 minutes until the chicken is fully cooked through to 165 degrees Fahrenheit and the veggies are nice and tender and golden. Once that chicken comes out, we're going to let it rest for about 5 minutes and then shred everything, put it on a plate, serve it with the naan and the veggies, and enjoy. And make sure you save the bones and the skin and the broth separate so we can use these later on in more recipes. Next, we'll be making a very light and fresh chicken penne, and this is going to come together very quickly as well, and that's one reason why I love this recipe. It's very satisfying and very easy. So first, in a large pan, I'll heat some oil. Any oil will be fine, or even some chicken fat from the top of that chicken broth from the last recipe we used. Then I'll saute some minced garlic until it's fragrant. That only takes about 30 seconds, and I'll add one portion of that chicken that we set aside from one of the last recipes. Let that get all cooked through, and then add a bunch of diced tomatoes. This is about 5 Roma tomatoes that I diced. Then I'm going to season that with some salt and a little bit of pepper, and just let that saute and reduce until it becomes nice and thick and those tomatoes break apart and become a really nice fresh sauce. Now, as those tomatoes get tender, I will use the back of my spoon to sort of crush the tomatoes. I'll add a little bit of fresh basil from my garden, but that's optional. If you have Parmesan cheese on hand, that would be amazing to add with this as well. And save some of that pasta water. We're going to cook the pasta while we're making the sauce and all of this as well. So take some pasta water, about a half a cup, add that in. It'll really make the sauce nice and creamy and saucy. Then add the pasta directly to it, give it a good toss, and then you're just going to serve it just like that. If you have more fresh basil, you can add that. You can add more pasta water if you want it more saucy. And again, if you have Parmesan cheese, that would be amazing to add to this dish, and enjoy. Next, we're going to be making a very easy chicken and quinoa soup. This one does come together in about 35 minutes or so very nice and easy as well. In a large pot, I'll heat some oil. You can use any fat or oil or water that you have on hand, and then I'll add my onions and carrots and saute until they're nice and soft and translucent. That'll take about 3 to 4 minutes. Then I'll add some minced garlic and saute until fragrant, about 30 seconds more. And then I'll add about 6 cups of liquid. You can do 2 cups of chicken broth and 4 cups of water, or 6 cups of broth, depending on what you have on hand. Then I'll add about a cup of shredded chicken from the previous recipe and my rinsed quinoa. Now I'm going to let this boil, and then I'll add some seasonings, just some salt, pepper, and Italian seasoning again to this. But again, you can add any seasoning that you like to enjoy this soup. And then we're going to cover that and cook it for about 15 minutes. After 15 minutes, I'm going to add my chopped zucchini. You can add spinach to this as well, and any other veggies you have on hand. You can see I have a green bean from the garden I added. Then I'll just cook that another 5 minutes and then serve it up and enjoy. Next is going to be a quinoa chili casserole. That's the name that I came up with this. It's absolutely delicious and really reminds me of a chili. So first, in a large pot, I'm going to add some oil or some chicken fat in this case, heat it on medium heat, and then add my red onions and saute those until they're nice and soft and translucent. Again, about 3 to 4 minutes for those onions. Then I'll add some minced garlic and continue to cook until fragrant, about 30 seconds more. Then I'll add my tomatoes, bell pepper, black beans. I'm just going to be adding a half of a can of black beans. In this case, I'm saving the rest for another recipe, and you can use any color bell pepper that you like as well. Then I'll add that can of corn and some seasonings. This is really important. We're going to add chili powder, cumin, garlic powder, marjoram, salt, and pepper, and then give that a good stir. If you don't have marjoram, that's okay. It might be in your spice rack though, so just give it a check and see if you have it. Then add that rinsed quinoa and some chicken, and then we'll add some chicken broth on top, or some water mixed with a little bit of the drippings from one of the recipes where we just had drippings from the chicken. I'll give that a good stir, bring that to a boil, and cover, reduce the heat, and let that cook for about 18 minutes. Then I'll give it a good stir and serve this in bowls with any optional toppings. We made some chips earlier, so if you have some chips, put that on the side and serve it with Greek yogurt, avocado, some additional fresh diced tomatoes, maybe some hot sauce, and enjoy it. It's so good. I really hope that you love this one. Next, we're going to be making my absolute favorite dinner, loaded chicken nachos. So again, we're going to make sure we have a bunch of those chips fried in advance. I used about 4 tortillas to make chips with this, and it was very simple and only took me about 10 minutes to do. Then in a small saute pan, I'll add my chicken from a previous recipe. That's about a cup of chicken. If it's frozen, you can just add it to the pan, add a little bit of water and cover it to let it thaw out really quickly. Then I'll add the rest of those beans and some taco seasoning. You can just use chili powder or any kind of seasonings you like for this, or no seasonings at all. That can of black beans will add a lot of seasonings, and you can see I didn't drain the can of beans either. I like to use the liquid from the beans. It's really just water and seasonings, and that sauce is actually really delicious in the can. So there's the chips. Now you can air fry the chips instead as well. That's up to you. And I'm going to mash this avocado and add some lime juice directly in the avocado skin. It just makes it a little bit easier. I don't have to use a bowl this way. Now I'm going to put one layer of the chips on a plate. This is an oven safe plate, but if you don't have anything like that, you can just put these on a baking sheet in one even layer, top it with your chicken and bean mixture and some shredded cheese and broil it for just a few minutes until it's melty, and then top it with your Greek yogurt, red onions, bell peppers, tomatoes, avocado, salsa, green onions, hot sauce, whatever you have on hand. You can really make this dish your own and really make it exactly the way that you like it, and it's fun for the whole family to be able to kind of assemble their dishes all by themselves, and I personally love that. It's really delicious. I hope you love this recipe too. It's one of my favorites. This next recipe, I challenged myself to create a more budget-friendly version of the viral creamy boursin pasta. So first, I'm just going to put some cream cheese in a bowl with 4 tablespoons of unsalted butter, some salt, garlic powder, dried dill, marjoram, dried basil, dried thyme, dried parsley, just all the seasonings. Then I mash that together and then put it in an airtight container in the refrigerator just to let that chill and sort of get back to its original shape, so that way it melted nicely when I add it to my casserole dish next. So once that's nice and chilled, just about an hour or two, then I'm going to add that to my large casserole dish and add all of my grape tomatoes all the way around, about 5 garlic cloves or as much garlic as you like, then top it with olive oil and salt and pepper. And I'm just going to bake this at 425 degrees for about 25 to 30 minutes until the cheese is nice and melty and the tomatoes are really nice and blistered. And in the meantime, I'm cooking the pasta on the stove so it's ready to come out as soon as the sauce is ready. So when this is all done and blistered and melty, I'm going to mix it all up and smash those tomatoes and smash the garlic and give it a good mix. And then I'll add some of the pasta water from the pasta that was cooking just to make it really nice and saucy and creamy. And then I'll add the pasta to this and give it a good toss. And you can add more pasta water as you like to really get the consistency that you like for this, but it's really going to be amazing and rich and filling. I really hope that you love this recipe, and if you try it, let me know what you think in the comments, because it really surprised me and it's very budget friendly and really comes together super fast. And I think this is going to be a staple in our household because I really loved it and so did the whole family. This last recipe is an easy way to use all the rest of the ingredients that we have on hand, and it comes together really fast in about 20 minutes. So we'll add about half a cup of rinsed quinoa and the rest of our chicken broth, just about 2 cups. Then that last portion of chicken, our frozen veggies, some salt, pepper, garlic powder, and Italian seasoning. And this one is really fun because you can do any seasonings that you like. So if you want another chili flavored dish, you can do chili powder. Really just have some fun with this. Mix it on up, bring it to a boil, reduce the heat, and cover it for about 15 to 20 minutes or until that quinoa is nice and cooked through. And that's it. And we're going to serve it and enjoy with any toppings that you like. Super fast, super easy, great for a busy night. I hope you love this one too. If you need to make more chicken broth during this meal plan, or you just want to make some for another dish in the future, this is how I do it. In a large stock pot, I add my chicken bones and also the scraps from all the veggies from the week. In this case, it was carrot skins, onion skins, tomato and zucchini ends, and I just covered that all with water and then partially covered it with a lid and brought that to a boil and reduced the heat and let it simmer for at least 2 hours. Once it was done simmering, I let that cool just a little bit and then strained it through a fine mesh strainer and then let that cool in the refrigerator. After it cools, it only lasts about 3 days in the refrigerator, so usually I'll portion it out and keep some in the freezer for when I need it, or I'll just make a soup with it or something like that right away. Just depends on how you're using it. Now, if you're trying to get the chicken fat from drippings or from broth, all you have to do is refrigerate it, and then you'll see that the fat has separated from the drippings or the broth, and you're just going to carefully remove that with a spoon. I'm just going to show you that here. This is the drippings from the leg quarters that we made earlier in the week. And I am just scooping the fat off of the top here, and down on the bottom, you're just left with this really concentrated, delicious, sort of like chicken stock concentrate. And I'm just going to add that to water when I need it. And you can see the chicken fat is really nice to use in place of butter or oil. And that's what I used for this week. I hope you enjoyed the recipes and at least got some ideas for some meals to make. If you try anything, please let me know down in the comments. And I have a whole bunch of other budget meal plans for you to check out if you'd like. Have a wonderful day.